Etsy, what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about two things. We're talking about Daredevil number 596, which came out in January of 2018. And we're also talking about episode 2 of Disney's new Daredevil series. So in number 596, we get Daredevil's dodging a citywide police manhunt with Mayor Fisk at the helm now that he's in charge and he's made vigilantism illegal. Matt Murdock is on a quest to discover how Fisk has cheated his way to the throne, so to speak, of New York, and he has to escape the cops in the process. We're also introduced to interesting character named Muse. It's a new villain who turns murder into twisted, gruesome art. So we're going to see more of that coming. So that's gonna get things interesting. That's gonna mix things up. But we're just introed to them in this issue. And the TV show, we've got a very different angle being explored. It's a little more um, I guess you could just say we've got Fisk struggling to stick to this the principles that he believes he's cognizant of that he's committed himself to as mayor, and slowly, piece by piece, kind of becoming succumbing to his old ways in order to rein in people who dislike him for his past life. We're seeing him make compromises to those principles, which is interesting. We've also got Matt uh, representing someone who tried to intervene in a subway fight, who ends up being a vigilante himself, who believes that you should be on the street fighting, because if you're not on the street, no one else. I mean, who else is going to fight for New York except vigilantes? And Matt, who's hung up the cowl in episode 1, is gets to struggle with that, arguing with someone who's still out there, uh, keeping crime off the streets, which is interesting. And yeah, and then we've also got some therapy couch sessions too, which is interesting. So that's there's a lot of interesting stuff I think happening in both, and we're going to talk about it.
I definitely liked the comic quite a bit. And the show I'm liking a little bit. I will say that I am a sucker for Law and Order. So some of the Law and Order elements of the episode, I might be more forgiving of than other viewers. But like the comic is fascinating because it's a long kind of a most of it's a long chase scene, or a chunk of it's a long chase scene, that as Daredevil tries to evade the cops. And it's pretty tense. You're kind of, he gets cornered by, helicopters. You're kind of wondering how he's going to escape. They're even equipped with anti superhero technology, and they're sending sonic pulses at him. So it's pretty nail biter tension there. The thing that I think is interesting about both the show and the comic that I wanted to bring up is the fact that one of the things I think I think Matt, you'll find this interesting. Both the comic and the show are so based out of New York. Like they're very much a piece of literature. They're both pieces of literature or art that I think only can be created in New York. And so, for example, when you've got in the comic, Daredevil is leaping off of rooftops, and the cops are chasing him, but the cops are name dropping like what I assume to be real street names and locations. And so these are the kinds of, and if you talk to someone from New York or has familiar with the city, like I said, they'll name drop places. It's very, location oriented. Oh, on the corner of these, two streets. And so it's this, this
Yeah,
artifact of New York. And the more that you know of New York, the more you can connect to what's going on. So there's, from a sort of anthropological or ethnographic side of things, it's very fascinating. And the show does it a little bit too, because Fisk has this whole bit where he talks about, LaGuardia. And for many people, they probably only have heard of LaGuardia as just the airport. But, Fisk takes a moment to actually talk about the actual man who inspired the airport and Tammany Hall and all the rest of that. And again, it's such a show And Marvel as a universe is so distinctly tied to New York City specifically. It's not Metropolis, which is this made up city that's, more or less based on New York. It's literally just New York. So you can mention specific, locations and street corners, and it's all based in that city. I do find that to be a fascinating aspect of it.
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, and a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day, classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
So the way I would categorize the telling of this story between these two mediums in the comics and in the show, in economics, there's this theory called the tragedy of the commons. It's when something is a public space and a lot of people get to use it. What ends up happening is people will come and end up using it their own way. And so something that kind of belongs to everybody ends up belonging to nobody because everybody wants to use it for their own personal use, their own personal interpretation of how that space should be used. Uh, so this Mayor Fisk storyline is the commons, and it's great fertile ground, a lot of potential and storytelling there. In the comics, they handle it appropriately. And the way I would describe it is the tragedy of the genres. And in the comic telling medium, you have a very action based storyline, which is kind of what you want to see in a comic book. You don't want a lot of drawn out, meandering, pontificating, philosophizing, and soul searching going on in your comic book. You just want the basis, the conflict there to be explored in a very intense, immediate way, and lots of energy and impact. And then you transfer it over to the TV setting, and everybody is giving little speeches and on a soapbox and getting therapy and in a courtroom debating things. And every main hero and every main character has to have like a Karen at their side that they're going to glorify and listen to and defer to. There's all of these tropes that are inserted into this really great, setup of Mayor Fisk becoming the mayor of New York, and how reconciled that has to be for Daredevil as the one who has considered himself the protector, and now his former nemesis is the one who's actually protecting the city and doing a better job of it than him by making him the villain. So it's not done well in the show, in my opinion. Maybe it's great TV, and maybe all of these things are typical TV fodder. We've seen main characters sitting on the therapy couch and getting psychoanalyzed, and people loved it in The Sopranos.
Yeah.
People love their courtroom drama and tension, and going back into the judges' chambers to argue points in Law and Order. But do all of these things necessarily need to be in the storyline of Mayor Fisk, where in the comic it's so appropriately handled as something that is just tense and a conflict that Daredevil has to overcome, and he does so thus far in his very deft fashion as a superhero should. Can we please get back to superhero storytelling at some point here and get away from the TV genres that have been inserted into the Mayor Fisk tragedy of the genres?
That's a good point.
Mm.
That's something that I would say though, that's some what you're discussing is something that has become endemic to superhero television. So I think I think part of it is explained by so many people who make superhero TV shows. This is just how they do it. I think a lot of the CW shows kind of do something similar. Maybe not with courtroom scenes, but just like having occasional superheroing while a lot of it is just soap opera stuff. in coffee shops and apartments and such. And so I think that's just kind of like almost like the television cinema language, and they don't maybe they don't even know how to not tell that story, which is so it's a very interesting thing to think about. um the only thing I can say in defense of the Law and Order aspects is that if you were going to have a Law and Order-esque superhero, it would be Daredevil. And what's unfortunate is that it would be Daredevil or She-Hulk, right? And then I know that there's some interviews I think you can look up where the She-Hulk creators were originally planned on making their show a courtroom drama, but they didn't know how to write one. Like they come right out and say, we didn't know how to write a courtroom drama. We didn't have the staff writers or the consultants or whatever to do that. So we just did whatever we did with She-Hulk. So I actually like the idea, at least in theory, of having Daredevil be more Law and Ordery on that continuum. I will completely agree that I'm so tired of taking superheroes and supervillains and just putting them on the therapy couch, speed running them to therapy there. And I think that the big example in this episode, of course, is Kingpin and Vanessa having some sort of marital conflict, because Vanessa has essentially become the Kingpin of the underworld. She's taken that role, and Kingpin's actually trying to do this quasi legitimate thing. And so now there's going to be a conflict between the two of them, because they both represent now underworld and overworld in a way. That's a fascinating bit of tension, but it would have been better explored in a scene where the two of them actually like hashed out together at each other. And in a superhero melodrama, you'd want the two of them like, emotionally reacting to each other and not mediating in a sterile environment with a neutral third party. In real life, that's how you probably want to do it. In real life, you don't want these two characters yelling at each other, but it makes for very poor fiction, and it makes for terrible superhero drama, in my opinion. So I completely concede that, and I do think it is. I think it's linked to what you're talking about, which is this idea of taking a niche genre like the superhero and bringing it to the commons and trying to make it for everyone, and therefore diluting it.
Yeah.
That is, I think, an observable phenomenon that we see.
Yeah, they're definitely shoehorning it into all the TV genres, and there a lot of it is, hey, you liked this show, so as long as we redo a piece of that in the superhero setting to tell the story of Daredevil and Mayor Fisk, you will like this other series because we're referencing TV genres when we're making a TV show about Daredevil. So I'm not really a fan of the cherry picked aspect of it. I don't think it's good in any of the things that it's trying to do. It's not good courtroom drama. It's not good psychoanalyzing your main villain. It's not good tension between Daredevil and Mayor Fisk, which is like supposed to be the heart of this entire storyline. It's totally lost in trying to get all of these other better TV storytelling tropes into this show so that they could hold on to this the TV audience.
To add a little bit more, and and to maybe kind of offer my concluding thoughts, I'm thinking about the shortcuts that we have developed in mainstream comics to tell good stories. Because it it's just as easy to draw a guy in an action pose as to draw him in anything else. Like it's just as expensive. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't
Mhm.
cost more.
Right.
So why not lean into action, which is more exciting for the reader and it's more likely to attract them without having to, spend more of Marvel's money. And there's a lot of that with television, I think too, where there it actually does cost more to do action scenes, you know, and it costs less to do these like cafe dialogues where they're just kind of sitting and there's emotional tension and you just kind of you know you make sure the dialogue is really spicy and you hope you get in 2 or 3 takes some pretty committed acting from the actors. That's usually how TV is just done, and again, like in 20 was it 2014, 2015, Netflix, that was an exploratory moment where we've had gritty superheroes on the screen already with Nolan and that sort of thing, but we hadn't really seen it done super successfully in TV. And that was my sense of Daredevil at the time was like, okay, we could do something that actually isn't expensive to do in a way, right? With like on television, we could actually do the street level grounded Law and Order TV show that we know how to do, we've been doing for decades, and we can do that with superheroes, and it's actually going to work this time. But now it's feeling it's like are we really doing um that same approach? Like we said, like Law and Order's been on for 20 years, right? Like that same approach just doesn't feel innovative. It doesn't feel like it's leaning it feels like it's merely leaning on the shortcuts that television has. It's not we're not actually leaning on that and then building something really strong like the original show. The impression we got with the original show. The original show did lead on those shortcuts with television, but it built something pretty, I think, pretty effective. You can't do the same thing twice and expect the same result.
Speaking of shortcuts, I would be remiss to not point out to troll you, Matt. The final page
Yeah.
of the Daredevil comic has your favorite shortcut on it, and
Yeah. Copy pasting frames. Yeah, I love it. Panels.
Yeah. I don't know about like the cost cutting measures for the show because so many of the scenes felt so plotting and overly long, like it would linger forever on every shot. And the dialogue was just so pointless in many of the moments. There's a moment there where Mayor Fisk is sitting in traffic and he's wondering about why everything is jammed up and the city is jammed up and the whole city is not working. He's going back and forth.
When the scene is literally stuck in traffic.
Yeah, yeah. The dialogue is stuck in traffic.
I know, it was such a metaphor for what was going on there. It was so on the nose.
The whole show is stuck in traffic, in my opinion. And yeah, the whole even the storyline with the wife taking over his criminal empire. There's nothing that about her that exudes, crime underboss, aesthetic. Like there's nothing menacing about her. There's nothing cold. She's just sitting there, kind of like, yeah, I did a great job, and now it's super successful. And
There's a I have a I don't know how far, I don't know if I'm correct on this theory, but there is this theory that I've got regarding what they're doing with the dialogue, because soap operas like have existed for generations, where you have like insight, like high drama dialogue, and I've noticed in the Netflix shows, and then in this show there's almost this deliberate choice to run in the opposite direction. I think it has to do with the content that they're dealing with, and maybe a concern. I feel like that they're afraid to embrace the comic book. There's
mm,
this idea that, because if you read the like the original like Silver Age stuff, it's melodrama out to 11. Like every character from Daredevil to his villains to the supporting cast, Spider-Man, all those other examples, they're always having the most melodramatic, over the top reactions to things, and it's like, oh, I'll never talk to you again. Like it's that level of drama. And I think it got associated, like comic book writing, I think got associated with that level of melodrama. And so what you were seeing here is this sort of mundane realism, like literary realism, where it's like, no, every conversation has to sound like a conversation you could hear off the street. All of the important things have to be subtextual. Like there can't be anything where it's like, characters come out, say, here's me and my plan, and here's you with your opposition to my plan, and mash those things together in a dramatic way. Everything has to be like, we're talking about, what's the color of the coffee today? Oh, the coffee is hot. That therefore means that I feel a particular way about something. It's all got to be like realist subtext. I think it's because they're afraid of the comic. They don't want to be called. Oh, I think the writers are afraid to be labeled, I worked on a comic book property. So
they didn't have to
Mm.
film the comic though, like word for word. Like
yeah.
there's the comic was so immediate was the point. Like with the whole idea of superheroes being hunted and not really welcomed in Mayor Fisk's New York. was just straight to Daredevil. You know, they are hunting Daredevil. The cops are chasing Daredevil. He's the nemesis in the comic book, but they have to go in this like circular route in the show where they have to reference the real world event of somebody getting killed on the subway because somebody heroically steps in to try to save what he views as a crime, and that person happens to be, in this case it's Hector, and he was a vigilante in his part-time. So the fact that he, you know, did this heroic act is now tainted by the fact that he's a superhero. So like this really diverted kind of missing the point, not getting to the heart of the story
Yeah.
approach to the material. It's not about the dialogue and it's not about having the latte moments. It's about why can't you just keep the focus on where the meat of the crux of the story is, where people are going to be invested and interested in actually seeing this interplay between Daredevil and Mayor Fisk, with their roles kind of, you know, reversed, where Daredevil is the villain and Fisk is a pseudo heroic figure in this case. Still kind of referencing quite heavily a lot of the Trump tropes as well. He's he's this guy who's as portrayed in the show, very insecure, villainous, doing all of these things for very self-serving reasons, but because he's very efficient and he knows how to cut through red tape, he's getting things done, and people just like a no-nonsense guy like that in charge, and everybody's just tired of the politics as usual. But going about, you know, presenting all of that, they go through this whole storyline with the commissioner, the police commissioner retiring, and he has to threaten him to get him to stay in office so that there won't be any pay raises for the force. Like it's so taking the long route to getting to what the core of this storyline is, and it doesn't make any sense why they're doing even TV this way, quite frankly. Final thoughts, guys. Twitless.
I like I said, I enjoyed the comic as an artifact of New York, and and also like I said, I think it does a good job of just having some good action beats. So as it's a pretty good comic. The show, it's still hard to say because it's only episode 2, and the way these streaming shows work now is they're not just treated, I think, as individual episodes, but as they're puzzle pieces that work together to create a single whole. That's just how modern television now works. Everything's a mini series, so it's kind of hard to judge the mini series until you've seen the whole mini series, and then you can look back and actually. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that my opinion on episode 2 will be entirely probably reframed by the finale. As far as it goes as just an episode 2, it's okay. I guess.
Etsy.
Yeah, I think on paper there's still a lot, I mean, to both the comic and the comic's actually achieving something, I think, with the medium, and the script, I think, is leading in some good directions with the TV show. I'm just getting I think we're getting some, like, phoned in, execution of a lot of the stuff that's on the script page, but I still think there's enough setup. This is some interesting setups that are leading into the tropes that we expect from TV, from quality TV, that this could actually, I mean, it's certainly a conversation topic, and it does kinda it stretches Matt Murdock in interesting ways. We get to see Fisk in his usual, multidimensional self that we got from the Netflix show. So, I think interesting things are happening, and I'm looking forward to reading and watching more.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.